I am being watched. Welcome, everyone. This is my thoughts on Person of Interest, Season 1, Episode 20. It's called Matsya Nyaya, and I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. Anyway, we're here. We're here for a pretty important episode, I would say, from a lore perspective, from a history of Reese as a character, and kind of the big thing that went down towards his end of his CIA tenure. We've had hints, of course, that of what maybe went down. Obviously, Snow's kind of said a few things before, which I didn't believe. Although for a bit in this episode, you think he's going to do what Snow said he did, which is kill his handler, Stanton. But of course, that's not exactly how things go down. There's a bit more to it, and there's an interesting bit of lore that's very mysterious that kind of, is tied to it. Probably the thing that I have been the most critical of throughout this season is probably been the flashbacks with Reese and Stanton, just because I think there's some of the weaker elements of the show that have been here, and it's not been that many. Don't get me wrong; it's been like 2 or 3 episodes that have had a few mediocre flashbacks. It's not been a big deal, but this was easily the most I've enjoyed any of their flashbacks because it felt like there was some prominent stuff happening this time. And not only that, it had a cool kind of vibe to it because they get sent on this mission in China to this ghost town to retrieve a laptop. And as soon as they say it's for a laptop that's got some sort of fancy virus on it, my brain started tingling. I was like, wait a minute, we're talking about computery stuff here. Why do I have a feeling that this is going to somehow be something that connects to the machine? Because these flashbacks take place in 2010, which is a year or possibly less than a year before the start of the show. And I remember correctly that the homeless episode brought up that John had been living as a homeless person for about 6 months. So it stands to reason, the timeline here, that, yeah, it was maybe that short, and it was only about a year maybe before the start of the show where his CIA run came to an end, and we see how that kind of goes down in this episode. And I thought that was quite interesting. I thought it was mostly exciting. There was a nice cool vibe to this ghost town, which turns out to be like a mass grave, effectively. Like there's tons of people here who have been killed on site, and the one guy who's not quite dead yet says they came and took it, and Reese never hears like this translated, this particular part, but he says they took the machine. And when they go inside, we see reams of paper that have got numbers and text on them that look kind of like social security numbers, or maybe the equivalent in China. And immediately my brain's racing because I'm thinking, well, did they somehow steal the machine, or did China develop their own machine at some point? And I'm leaning towards the latter, but the interesting question here is, because keep in mind, the machine had already been around for a while by this point. When we get to the end of this story, and it turns out both Reese and Stanton have been given orders to kill each other, and Reese realizes it's because they want to cover up. They want to confirm whatever's here has been killed. At this point, I'm thinking the laptop's a red herring. That's just what they're told they're looking for. What they're actually looking for is the machine, and they want to confirm it's destroyed. But of course, what the people back home don't know, what the people in the CIA or whoever's given the orders don't know, is that the machine that was here was taken by some other violent force. Because they're given a whole story about how this is a ghost town because some development company was developing it and went bankrupt, so no one lives here. But then when they're coming into the town, it's like, nah, there's quarantine stuff up everywhere, as if there's a radioactive leak or something like that. And it's obviously to keep people out. And they assume in the moment, I think, that this is the cover story for whatever they're hiding here. And I think that part is technically true, but obviously if we're saying that the Chinese have their own version of the machine, and that maybe there was a group of people working here who were maintaining it and getting readings from it and whatever else, that's what they were covering up. It wasn't some laptop with a virus. It wasn't anything like that. This all was just fluff, effectively. At least I think so, based on what we're getting in this episode. But all this was super interesting. It was kind of cool, realizing that one of the things that Reese did before kind of links up to the machine before he knew what the machine was, or before he knew Finch. is kind of exciting, and it's not too in your face. It's not like, you know, it could feel a bit too cute potentially, but I think here it works because he never gets enough to put two and two together later that he's already been involved in some way with the machine. But there is an interesting little tidbit here where when they're sitting down and eating before the end of the story, I think it's Stanton who says, you know, do you never wonder where we get our orders from, or where we get our, sorry, that wasn't orders, it was where we get our intel from. That's an important distinction, because immediately I thought, well, maybe you're getting them from the machine. Like, maybe the missions that they were on in the last few years of their CIA run was literally jobs that were being given to them because the machine was uncovering things, and they were just never told that that's where all this intel was coming from, because they you know, they didn't ask. They just get their orders and they go do it. I thought all that stuff was super exciting without spelling things out for the audience. It just kind of gave you all these seeds of possible connections to the lore of the machine and how the government, or the secret part of the government, have been using it and sending out like these operatives to go and clean up things that no one knows about and they have no proof of necessarily, other than the machines telling them, hey, these people are going to be problems. And then the idea that there's also this race from other countries to try and develop their own, and if that did happen, then someone took it before this place got blown up by the CIA, then who has it? Who has this rogue version of the machine, this second version? Is it still in China, or is some other force taking it? Whether it's another country or some secret organization, or like there's a lot of possibilities here, and I feel like we're only just sort of tapping into the surface and the potential of what all this could be leading to. So I don't know, maybe I'm way off base with half of the things I just said, I have no idea, but the fact that it got my mind going that much, and you know, the lead up to it with the, like, okay, all these people were killed to hide something, and even Reese and Stanton are set up to kill each other because no one wants them to get out and know that anything here existed, even though I don't think they really know exactly what's here, beyond just that they know it wants to be destroyed, right? Or someone wants to destroy it, not that it itself wants to be destroyed. I said that weird. So that stuff was super fascinating, and obviously it sort of comes into the main story because Stanton is alive at the end of the episode. She's in the present day. Snow and his henchmen, well, I say henchmen, they're CIA agents, so it's not really like, it's not like a crime boss and a henchman, but you know what I mean. They track down what they think is Reese, but it is very telegraphed. They kind of word it in a way where it's obvious they're going to twist it into, no, it's actually her. Like because they mentioned like an injured CIA operative was helped in China in 2010, and I'm like, well, we know Reese got away, but this sounds more like it's probably her. It was obviously going to reveal that it was her. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that in that moment, it was quite obvious where it was going with that. They don't tease it out for too long before she shows up, and she shoots the other guy. She wounds Snow, and that's our cliffhanger for the episode. And I realize I'm talking about the ending before I talk about any of the main plot, but the flashbacks were definitely, for once maybe, actually, the really juicy part of the episode. That's not normally the case. Not since the Finch and Ingram stuff have I really felt that, I think. Which is not to say that I did not enjoy the rest of the episode. I actually think most of the main part of the episode was really good as well, with only one element feeling a little undercooked. There was one element that was a little bit weaker, but I'll get to that. The plot of this one is that they get a number, and it's, which, I mean, well, that was a weird sentence. Of course they get a number. They always get a number. That's the show. But they get a number for this guy who works at an armored truck, right? So it's not quite it's not the bank armored truck. You know, banks have their armored trucks who go around collecting the money, but it's kind of like that, where it's more private stuff. So, and you know, they never really know what they're carrying, but sometimes it'll be diamonds for some sort of rich client. Sometimes it'll be, I don't know, art or something, like, you know, a variety of things. But it's the armored truck. The guys have got the vests on and they're transporting it through the city. And Finch gets Reese a job with the other two guys, and the guy who's got the number is kind of a goofball. Reese is immediately commenting on how these guys aren't prepared for any kind of real threat. Like, their weapons aren't being maintained properly, they're not putting on their bulletproof vests properly, things like that. So the big reveal, of course, like halfway through the episode, maybe a little bit before, is that the guy whose number came up, Tommy, he is actually the perpetrator, and he is working with other people to rob the truck. And he shoots his friend and Reese and makes off with a bunch of platinum that he's going to sell later. I think this part of the episode, as far as Tommy's concerned, is actually quite effective. It's not super surprising that it's him. It's just that sort of like they make him so kind of nice and likable to a point that he kind of has to turn out to be a bad guy. Just in the way that, you sort of think like that when you're watching TV. Like, there's like, okay, they're making him too nice, he's going to be bad. But even with that, I still think they did a good job with it, because they make a point of like him being friends, like really good friends with the driver of the truck, and they bounce off each other quite a bit. And he's joking around with Reese, he's making nice comments with him, to the point where I was expecting him and the driver to both be bad guys. I was expecting them to be working on something together, and it only was going to be Reese who was like kind of turned on as the new guy, because he wasn't there for the planning of whatever they're doing. It was actually the biggest surprise of the whole thing was that it was just Tommy, and that he not only turned on the driver who worked with him and he was good friends with, but he kind of goes out of his way to kill him as well. Like, when they do the whole thing where so there's like a bomb under the truck and it flips the truck over, and they come out, he shoots Reese, he shoots his friend, the driver, and I thought, okay, one hit to the bulletproof vest, that's put him down, but that's fine. I thought he'll just leave him there, because why not? He doesn't, like, he can get away. But he makes a point of like shooting him again to make sure he kills him, and I thought that was particularly vicious. Like, really mean-spirited, which really stuck out as just being much nastier than... Okay, I was expecting the heel turn, but I wasn't expecting him to be that bad. So I thought that was effective. And they have the whole thing where he's got a wife and a kid, but he's clearly into or having an affair with this waitress at a diner that they frequent all the time. That gets me to the thing that I think is the undercooked part of the episode. The one weak element of the episode, I think, although I understand why they're doing it in a larger sense, is that the waitress turns out to be the mastermind behind the whole thing, and then betrays Tommy and kills him to make off with the platinum. I thought that was... Like, the moment it happened, and it's like, okay, there's someone else here, and it turns out to be her, and they're still working together, I think it felt a little bit hollow to me, because they didn't really do enough with that character to make it feel like she was important enough to have this twist, if that makes sense. She really was just the girl at the diner. Reese has one scene with her where he goes and like demands to know where Tommy is, and she kind of breaks down because he was meant to show up hours ago and it hasn't, so he's probably ditched her as well. He's not just ditched his wife, he's ditched his mistress. And she gets upset about it. And then when she shows up here and she's actually the main bad guy and she betrays Tommy, it's like, damn, she's actually like really conniving. She was such a good actress, she convinced Reese that she was upset and that Tommy had ran away from her, and now she's betraying Tommy, and it just kind of felt like all of a sudden she's like really good at all this, and I feel like we didn't... She was barely a minor character before this scene, and all of a sudden seems like she's so important in the course of this episode. So that felt a little bit like rushed to me, I guess, is the thing. And I think part of that is maybe just because the flashbacks in this episode are quite meaty relative compared to what some of them have been before in previous episodes, and I think this is a casualty where some of this stuff just had to be as kind of condensed as much as possible. And I think it probably did this character's little twist where she's the bad guy a little bit dirty. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, though, and I do understand why they're doing it. This is mirroring the flashbacks where these two are working together, and we spend the episode largely thinking Tommy's turned on her, or at least a good portion of it towards the end, and then it turns out, no, she's actually turned on him. And that mirrors the flashbacks, because obviously Reese thinks he's going to have to kill Stratton. He decides not to because he's a good guy, and then she shoots him, and she's turned on him first instead. So it mirrors they mirror each other I get it. I get why they did this and why it relates to like the rest of the episode. But on its own, it just kind of feels a little bit like, okay, fair enough. I guess we're doing this now with her. So it's, you know, it's not a big deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal because I enjoyed the first half of this plot with Tommy, and I thought they handled his twist quite well. And more so, I enjoyed everything else that was going on in the episode in present day. I enjoyed all the stuff with Reese and Carter, like sort of rebonding again after the recent episodes where, you know, she was kind of she doesn't want to be involved for a while. Then the whole last episode with her son, so she wants more trust with Reese. She wants to be told more. She wants to be more in the loop, and he's kind of making effort to do that to an extent throughout the episode. But she kind of like backs out when Snow shows up because, hey, like they're on to me. It turns out he's actually there to warn her not to talk to the FBI. He's upset about that, and Carter makes a very good point about how, well, what exactly are you worried about the FBI finding out from Reese? So it seems like, yeah, like whatever Snow and his CIA buddies are up to is like, it's not exactly legal by any stretch of the imagination. It's a bunch of covert shit. So that stuff is all really solid, and it ties into this theme of Reese needing help and constantly thinking he doesn't need help. But then after the truck gets hit and he gets shot, Carter's there to, you know, greet him at the hospital and help him out of the bed, and it feels like, no, he does need help. And then later on, when he's going after Tommy and the girlfriend betrayal happens, you know, Reese ends up tied to, like, you know, a bench, and he almost dies from her. And then when the HR guy shows up with Fusco, he almost gets shot by this guy. And of course, it ends up being Fusco who's there to bail him out because Fusco shoots the HR guy in the back. Which, you know, I also enjoyed Fusco showing up earlier on in the episode because he's given this task by HR to go pick up something, and it turns out he was going to pick up the platinum, or at least the cut of the platinum, but Tommy had already killed the other two guys. So Tommy comes across as being quite vicious at this point, but then it turns out it's really more the waitress that's actually got this mean streak in her, which is quite interesting because they do this whole thing where Reese says, oh, she talked you into this. She got into your ear and she convinced you to do all of this. So again, I don't know if that's meant to mirror Stanton kind of like getting in Reese's ear those years ago and getting him, you know, making him a devout operative and hitman and all these other things they were doing. I can kind of see what they're trying to do with that. Yeah, this theme that Reese does actually need allies around him, and obviously Finch is constantly there to help him. But in the field, he's vulnerable here. He actually does almost get killed, and it's only because Fusco's there. And Fusco even comments earlier in the episode when they bump into each other in that earlier scene that I was mentioning. They have this moment where Fusco says, you know, I could have just shot you when I came in there and it would have made my life easier. And we know that Fusco's not happy working for HR. He's feeling strangled by it. He's feeling like he doesn't want to be doing it. He even says earlier, what do you want me to do with the money they're giving me? Because, you know, he's getting paid a cut for being a dirty cop. And she's like, I don't give a shit what you do with the money. I'm here to like find out who's behind HR and stop them. I don't care about what you do with the money. And Fusco's like response to this is to buy his kid new hockey gear because his stuff's all worn out. And it's like, you know what, as things go to spend the money on, it's kind of a good guy thing to do. Like, he's not like he's buying himself a fancy Rolex or something and like flashing the cash. He's doing something for his son, who we know he cares about. So, but he has this line where he's like, I could have just killed you and it would have made my life easier. And we don't believe he really wants to. But I think the reason why that line's there, beyond just the moment itself, is for later on, it presents the idea that Fusco had a choice here to either stick with Reese and protect Reese in this moment by taking out the HR cop, or by going down the path of actually just being part of HR, taking out Reese, and now he's just a dirty cop again, as if nothing ever really happened and there was no redemption over this season or anything like that. But he makes the right choice, of course. He picks Reese. And I think it's probably because he has a sense of purpose. It's probably because he's felt good. You know, whenever he's been involved in saving someone this season or doing some good, I think he's felt fulfilled by that. And I think that's why for here it's not really much of a choice. But he is good at this. He knows how to make it look like it was someone else. He uses the waitress's gun to do it and points that out. And it's like, yeah, I'm good at this. That's why you know, picked me for this thing in the first place. Yeah, those skills that he learned being a bad guy are very important, just like Reese's skills that he has accumulated by doing bad things for, whether it was actually the government or some shady part of the government that is actually working against the government. Either way, like, all the skills he picked up and developed while he was doing that are now being put for good cause. They're being put to use for the better of people and the better of everything. So, like, I think those ideas and, like, relating these two characters has been very easy since day one. And while Reese gives Fusco a really hard time, like, even in this episode, he can never just, like, thank him or give him a nice pat in the back. He has to be a dick about it constantly. I said in episode 1 that I feel like he sees the chance of redemption because he once upon a time was put in a situation where he had to do things that he's not proud of. And maybe he recognizes that Fusco does have a conscience and can be redeemed. And here we are, towards the end of the season, and it feels like we're playing out some of those beats, and it's nice to see them having developed over the course of these 20 episodes, and the adventures they've been on, the sights they've seen, all that stuff. So some little tech things in this episode I may as well point out. I enjoyed Carter's reaction when she's basically saying, hey, these photographs of all these license plates that you're getting from the back of the armored truck, these look just like the photos we get in our cameras from our cars. Did you steal this off my car? And Reese says, I didn't get it off your car. I thought that was a funny line. I also like that it's kind of a no-win episode, and that's something that Finch points out towards the end. He's like, did we accomplish anything here? Because we thought this guy was a victim, then it turned out he was the perpetrator, but then, as Reese points out, he's kind of both, because at the end he does get killed by his girlfriend. They didn't save him. And it's like, well, we got involved, we went through all this turmoil, you were shot at repeatedly, we did all this stuff, and it like, what did we actually achieve here? And it's kind of nothing. And I think that's an interesting outcome to have of some of these episodes, where maybe, yeah, like, we it's not even necessarily that they failed, because I think that there's value in that as well. And I don't know, have we even done that yet? Have we had an episode where there's a person to be saved and they just straight up fail and we get a sad ending? I don't know if we've done that yet. It has to happen at some point. It feels like such an obvious opportunity for drama that we have to do it at some point when the moment is right. But this wasn't even that. This was kind of this weird murky where there's no happy or sadness to it. It's just kind of, I mean, it's sad, I suppose, in a way, but it's not sad because you're sad the person died. You're sad because he was never even, like, that worth saving. Yeah, it's a whole very jaded and cynical outcome, and I think that's an interesting change of pace for how these stories wrap up. So I like that as well. I also enjoyed early on when Reese was just, like, being on the armored truck, and, like, he's getting twitchy every single time there's, like, a car screeching past, or they play a prank on him at one point where they make him think there's people with guns showing up, and Reese goes into John Wick mode, essentially. He's got his gun out and he's ready to shoot, and these guys are goofing around, which again lends to the twist of Tommy being the bad guy. But it's, yeah, they're not taking anything very seriously, and I kind of like that element to it. Even before we got twisty and turny and we did all the other stuff in the episode, the idea that Reese is working with people who are supposed to be prepared for the type of situation he deals with all the time, but they just are so complacent and they're so relaxed because nothing almost ever happens, that they're just not taking it seriously, and they're just, they're not professional enough. And having Reese feeling frustrated about that, and, like, in theory these guys should be able to be backup in a situation if the stuff goes down, but they're actually going to be useless, except obviously one of them turns out to be the bad guy. So no, it was good. It was good. Obviously, the cliffhanger is a big deal. Stanton's alive. She's in present day New York, and we'll see where that goes, and we'll see if there's a reunion with her and Reese. Oh, and that reminds me, one part of the flashbacks, which I have completely glossed over, is that Reese's ex-girlfriend calls him for something. It's very vague. She's very emotional, and she says her husband's fine, it's not him, but there's clearly something wrong, but she refuses to tell him, and he says, I'm going to be on a plane, I'll be there in 24 hours, and then he gets roped into this mission instead. So he never makes it, and he tries calling her back at one point to tell her he can't make it, and she doesn't answer. So we might be seeing some sad end to her story that they're kind of teasing here. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, I think likewise, the flashbacks with her have been maybe some of the weaker parts of the season. So if she does actually just kind of die in the flashbacks, I don't think I'll be too upset if that's how, you know, if she's done with the show and we can move on to stuff. But it's probably worth mentioning because it will likely come back up before the season's done, because we've got 3 episodes left. You know, we're in the end game now, and this cliffhanger feels that we're really getting into some big stuff it's more overall plot stuff than just the episode by episode stuff. So there you go. That has been episode 20 of Person of Interest. I'll be back next week with episode 21, and it's exciting because we are so close to the end. It feels like things are ramping up. So let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a lot. If you do, more people will find the reviews, more people will find the channel, so please do hit those buttons. It helps out a bunch. And of course, you can go above and beyond by going over to patreon.com/MailfuzzTV and supporting over there for a little bit of money every month and help keep the lights on. And of course, you get some bonuses. As far as TV bonuses go, you get a monthly review by myself for Columbo. I just did episode 2 in the last week or so. So if you're interested in that, then please go check it out. But that is the show. So thank you very much for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?